exciting initiatives that we've launched recently is something called Ditch the Dollar. There's a website called ditchthedollar.com. And the idea behind this is actually to, have been around libertarianism and the Libertarian Party for a long time. And people shout, end the Fed, end the Fed. And they've been doing this really for like the last 17 years. And in that 17 years, 2/3 of the dollars ever in existence were printed. There's been zero movement towards ending the Fed. End the Fed is a hollow political statement that assumes that somehow if you vote for people, they're going to somehow remove their own monopoly control over money. That's an unrealistic proposition. Ditch the dollar is something you can actually do. Anyone can do this individually. And so ditchthedollar.com, in addition to providing the background behind it, links to tutorials, step-by-step tutorials for how you can exit fiat and start using cryptocurrencies and other alternatives outside of the system. So I'll leave it at that. I could go in a million different directions, but I'll start there.
Now, that's a great place to start because, something near and dear to our heart, my friend, is this notion of exit and build. So thinking about alternatives, obviously, we focus very strongly on parallel societies and ecosystems here at Logos, but we're also very much interested in parallel technologies and creating alternatives that people can use in lieu of having to use these financial schemes, basically Ponzi schemes that governments issue called fiat currencies. Literally, and by the way, we know that fiat just means by decree, right? So I guess let's jump into, Aaron, right away, what's happening in the U.S. because this, and I don't mean to be an alarmist here, and I'm sure you don't either, but there is some need for alarm when it comes to some of this legislation that the U.S. is trying to push in the form of the Clarity Act, which has some renewed discussions happening right now, right? So this is like kind of hot off the press type stuff. So maybe speak to that, what your current feeling is, and for anybody who doesn't know, perhaps give them just a brief breakdown of what the Clarity Act even means for them.
Yeah, and I want to frame this because this bill has not gotten nearly enough attention, and there's been a lot of propaganda around it. And so a lot of people are actually buying the propaganda that this is the greatest pro-crypto legislation ever, and it's going to pump everybody's bags. The best way I can describe the Clarity Act is that it makes the Patriot Act look like the Declaration of Independence. It's actually the biggest surveillance bill that has ever been proposed. And so it's not just about crypto, but it is about crypto. So for instance, all of your transactions, all of your crypto transactions will be tracked in real time, including your transaction history. So not just a snapshot in time, but what is your series of trades over time? And that information will be shared with multiple, and I have some notes here, but multiple departments of the federal government and foreign central banks. But that's not the biggest part of the problem. The biggest part of the problem is, I essentially look at this bill as how you will own nothing, because the real idea behind this is around the idea of the tokenization of assets. So your stocks, your bonds, your mortgages, everything that you own. So people talk about money. They talk about, CBDCs or backdoor CBDCs. Well, the truth is most people don't hold most of their wealth in fiat currency in any form. They hold it in their investment portfolio or in their property. What is happening now as a result of the Clarity Act is all of your stocks and all of these other assets will be tokenized and will be subject to the same rules as crypto. So all of the 5-year tracking. So now imagine everything that you own can be tracked, programmed, and censored. Not just how you pay, but literally everything that you own. That is what the Clarity Act is actually all about. This is why people like BlackRock and others are excited about it, because this is going to give more technocratic, centralized control over the global assets on the planet. And so this is why this is a very important bill. And it's been sold as, well, yeah, but if this passes, it'll provide clear rules. And so now pension funds and 401ks will be buying Bitcoin, and now you're going to make a lot of money. Whether that even materializes if this bill passes is one thing. Frankly, if you look at what's happened, everybody thought ETFs were going to drive the price of Bitcoin up. And if anyone's looking at the price of Bitcoin recently, it hasn't panned out the way people thought. And so, but the trade-off here for being able to dump your bags on pension funds and 401ks is pretty much the complete loss of any type of privacy whatsoever, not just on crypto, but even on your non-crypto assets. And the important point about this is because most people don't even know how stocks work, but most people have their wealth in the stock market or 401ks. And you already have multiple middlemen between you and the stock. You don't actually have the physical stock certificate. You don't even vote the shares. There's already like a Fidelity or a BlackRock or a Vanguard in the middle. So you might say, well, I'm not interested. I don't have any crypto. What they're going to do is take the current system with stock certificates and the way that it works with intermediaries, and it's still, mostly electronic. And then where they're going to tokenize it. So you still won't hold the tokens, but all of the control will happen through your broker, through the Clarity Act. So this is a massive problem. This bill is horrible. And as I described it, this is basically how it's been written and what people have been discussing. It's only getting worse from there. So they don't have the votes yet to get it over the finish line. And in order to get it over the finish line, they need additional support. Well, the additional support they're looking to get is coming from Democrats. I believe they need 6 or 7 Democrats and law enforcement agencies. So we haven't seen the new language of this bill, but if all of a sudden you're seeing things like the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives and Dems come out in support of it, I can tell you it's going to be worse than what we already know is a bad bill. So this is essentially what's going on with the Clarity Act.
Yeah, man, that's absolutely terrifying. And you said, let's talk a little bit more too, Aaron, maybe speak to the fact that the way that this is being pitched, you did mention it in passing that they're always trying to frame this as being, pro crypto. There also has been language, and they've used this before, and I think I've seen it again recently, where it's like, oh, this is actually they're framing it as being against CBDCs, right? It's saying the banks are not going to have control of this. It's going to be like private issuers. But the way that this is written and set up, like as you mentioned, it still completely curtails any semblance of privacy. It takes power from individual and their personal financial responsibility away from them, puts it into the hands of the state and into their corporate gatekeepers. So this is overall, this really represents an anti-privacy panopticon. And so somehow we have to figure out how to push back against this, not only in terms of like the tooling that we use, but let's speak first to like just the trying to fight back against the propaganda and doing like some work around education. Like how do you even frame this to people where they understand exactly everything that it entails? Like you said, this is like the traditional legacy system, coming back into play as well, right? It seems like there's a lot of vectors that we could touch on here with the way that this is proposed.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems here. So I'm going to point you to one of my websites, day2026.com, it's my political website, but there's a section called bills. And what I've done in bills is I've actually taken the Clarity Act and some other legislation, and I've broken it down in ways that people can understand. So you can see who the sponsors are. You can see kind of the breakdown of the votes by political party, but then it actually shows you kind of the threats in a summary format. Now, you can read the bills yourself or use AI to analyze the bills, and I actually encourage you to do it. This is an important piece of legislation, but nevertheless, most of the people that vote on these things don't read them. So I don't know that that's an expectation that we can anticipate is going to happen at scale. But you can look at the kind of the breakdown of what the threat is if you're on the Clarity Act bill section on day2026.com. It's expands surveillance, expands financial control, adds identity requirement, decentralizes power, an erosion of due process. It is a corporate state fusion, and it enhances additional emergency powers as if they didn't have enough. And so it gives kind of the breakdown there. And even the section numbers, if you want to drill in, well, if you said, well, Aaron said this is about real-time surveillance. Well, that's ridiculous. That's alarmist. Well, it's section 404C5. You can go read it yourself. So I wanted to, in analyzing this, give people the ability to see the source material themselves. I think it's very important that people educate themselves and actually, frankly, learn how to read these bills, because there's a lot of the process with this is, they put things in here where it may sound one way, but then if you understand how legislation works or what it means to give a certain department certain discretionary powers, you realize, well, they wrote it and it says this, but it immediately gives power over here. So there's a lot of kind of nuance and understanding required. But the other things that I put on this site, which is also critically important, is a list of who profits. And so, which companies are involved and who's pushing it, who are the lobbyists. So, for instance, Coinbase, Ripple Labs, Chainalysis, Andreessen Horowitz, these are all people that are funding this because this is a matter of public record as well. So this is all information that most people never talk about, but there's been, and I don't even remember the number now, between the Clarity Act and the Genius Act, I mean, I think it's probably close to $200 million that's been spent lobbying. And the problem with this is, let's say you're an open source developer and you're an open source privacy developer, or you're a DeFi developer. How are you you don't have a seat at the table. These firms are some of these lobbyists get paid $1,000 an hour. So if you're an open source developer, how are you going to compete or even have a seat at the table with, Coinbase or banks? Because it's not, by the way, just crypto at the table lobbying on this. It's also traditional finance. There's no one really at the table representing individual rights, privacy, or freedom. And you can see that. You can even see the names. I've got the names of who the specific lobbyists are. Guy named Ryan Carney, his client is Crypto.com. Mike Conaway is Ripple Labs. It's important to know who these people are and what their background is, because the more you study these bills, and this is a big part of this as well, is you have a revolving door where somebody who used to work for the SEC or the CFTC, which are the regulatory bodies that oversee the implementation of this, they're now paid lobbyists. And this is essentially how the system works. And so we've documented the revolving door as well in terms of the lobbyists. The other thing about the bill, I mean, I'm actually noticing now I've got problems with the color contrast on the site here, which I need to fix. But there are, additional issues here in terms of media conflict of interest. So one of the things that's been challenging about getting content out regarding the Clarity Act, because there aren't many of us speaking out against it. And so if you're online, you may see a social media account and it's a crypto publication. And you're like, oh, hey, this crypto publication is pro this bill. It must be a good bill. But then when you actually look at who owns the crypto media companies, these are usually companies that are have a direct financial interest in the legislation itself. There's not a lot of independent journalism going on in the crypto space. In fact, it's every bit as captured as traditional media. The other problem is with these bills, with the Clarity Act, there has been a coordinated AstroTurf campaign using bots. And so there's been a surge of messaging following the House passage. It was a coordinated industry campaign that generated 320,000 messages to Senate offices. And so this is really what we're up against. We're up against a bill that has a couple $100 million behind it. It has lobbyists behind it. It has all of these trade associations behind it. The media is captured. And then a lot of the traffic that you'll see, because if you see a social media post and it's like, man, there's 3,000 likes on this post, people must really like this Clarity Act. They're bots. And part of the reason I know that is I always comment whenever I see any post. And I will say things like, this is the largest surveillance bill in the history of the United States, and no one will debate me on this point. And no one has ever debated me on any of these points that I've made, on any of these posts that appear to be viral. So it's all fake, it's all manufactured. And that is the hard thing that you're butting up against, because the problem is these are highly technical concepts. People don't understand how banking works or how the stock market works as a baseline, let alone what it means if you're now adding tokenization and all of these other things. And so this is why they come up with these names. The Genius Act, the Clarity Act, sounds innocuous, and then they pitch it as, why is it the Clarity Act? Well, we need clear rules of the road. This is one of the things that the politicians always say. This is the NPC, response. I will tell you, the markets do not need absolute surveillance. They don't need an absolute panopticon in order to conduct business. This is not what people are clamoring for. People are not clamoring for, massive legislation. They're actually clamoring for freedom. But they get a lot of value out of it. So they'll immediately harp on we have to worry that what they're talking about today, Elizabeth Warren and others, is, well, we have to be able to make sure we can enforce sanctions. So this is the big thing now. So when you see what people are talking about, understand they're just going to make the bill even worse in that area. And so the new one is sanctions. So they're going to tighten up a bill that's already really bad. I mean, I could go through all of the kind of section numbers and everything else. I won't. I'll touch on, as we're going through this conversation, some of the high points, but it really is that bad. It's basically, we're taking KYC AML laws, we're applying it to tokenization and crypto, and then we're going to extend that further to everything that you own, your stocks, your bonds, and everything else. And so this is what we're dealing with this bill.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying, Aaron. I think that we definitely are in a situation where we have to continue to educate people on this. So that's why I'm really glad that you're here. There's something else that you're mentioning that is kind of bubbling beneath the surface. It's something that you've talked about a lot before. I feel like the fact that all of these major players in crypto, the Coinbases of the world, the Andreessen Horowitzes of the world, the fact that all these folks are involved, and it's them who ostensibly represent the crypto ecosystem, is definitely a bastardization of what we actually stand for. But you're right, there's a lot of us who are actually in the cypherpunk space, the engineers, the coders who are actually working on hardcore tech like zero knowledge cryptography, et cetera. They don't have a say in this. I feel like the way that this has panned out speaks to what you've talked about a lot. This is part of this hijacking, like hijacking of Bitcoin, hijacking of the crypto space. And there's even, in my estimation right now, there's been attempts from various folks to start hijacking the privacy narrative as well, and start talking about privacy, even though it's a completely neutered, fucking taken, like privacy has been completely hijacked in a lot of different ways, and people talking about it, they don't mean real privacy. They mean privacy with backdoors, privacies with the ability for politicians and law enforcement officers and everyone else to be able to see into your activities. So let's maybe talk about some of the hijacking. I know you're a big fan of this, like at least understanding this in detail. How did we get here with this whole Clarity Act thing? Why are so many people just swallowing this up wholesale without really questioning it? Like, it seems like there's been some work put into place to get us to this unfortunate point that we're in now.
And there was a growing body of people that understood that, what Klaus Schwab and the WEF were doing is a bad thing. And that, not necessarily labeling it technocracy or fully understanding the ideology behind it, but you had people that were very adamantly against this. And so Trump comes in and presents himself again as a populist. And he comes in and positions himself as someone who, we're going to exit the WHO. We're going to exit these global institutions. It's going to be America first. And so he won on that rhetoric. And so the problem is that people don't have a fundamental understanding of the technology or the ideology behind it. And so they're taking his propaganda at face value. So for instance, one of the biggest rug pulls in all of this, and I've been as adamant against CBDCs as probably almost anyone. I mean, I actually ran for president to raise awareness on the issue and everything else. And so I have all of these people out there saying, oh man, you must be really happy. Trump came out and passed an executive order saying we're not going to have a CBDC. And so most of his base has been completely quelled. They actually believe that they won. They're taking victory laps, and they don't realize that essentially for the Genius Act, and I know we're primarily talking about Clarity, but the Genius Act is essentially a form of backdoor CBDC. Not that there's going to be a digital programmable currency issued by the central bank, but there is a regulatory regime that allows private issuers to implement stable coins, but in a way that has CBDC level surveillance. Because it turns out the Federal Reserve is horrible, and I will never defend the Federal Reserve, but all of the legislation around know your customer, anti-money laundering, all of the tracking, all of that stuff does not come from the Federal Reserve. It actually comes from Congress. The entire Bank Secrecy Act, which is this thing that we all have to deal with. Every time you try to set up an account, you have to go through biometric identification and fill out these forms, even if you go to set up a bank account. That all stems from the Bank Secrecy Act from Congress in the 1970s. And so essentially the Genius Act takes something that's very popular. Stablecoins are wildly popular. $33 trillion worth of stablecoin transactions in the last year, and then puts it under the regulatory control and capture of Congress, but it's sold as a win because it's not a CBDC. Well, as you can see, as we're talking about this, you have to understand about how a lot of things work to understand why this is a bad thing. And most people don't know how the existing system works. They don't know how the Federal Reserve works. They don't understand that most of our money is already digital, what the difference is between, token is, people will lump crypto into one thing. There's obviously a huge difference. On the one hand, a CBDC, on the other hand, a privacy coin with no backdoors. Those are both cryptos, but there's obviously different flavors, but a lot of people don't have the knowledge to understand how to differentiate. So crypto to them is just one bucket. And now it's being presented that the Genius Act is this pro-freedom thing, and we're leading in innovation. And in essence, what we've done is captured $33 trillion worth of transaction volume and put it under the watchful eye of the United States Congress. That's problematic, right? So if you had tried to launch a CBDC, you would have significantly more pushback. But they've been able to do this with zero friction. And you mentioned Andreessen Horowitz and others. It's not that Trump engineered this. Trump has become a vessel for technocracy, and probably the two biggest people driving that have been Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. So then there's a lot of confusion where people are like, oh, well, these guys are, capitalists. These guys are liberty oriented. People actually still think Peter Thiel is a libertarian, which is mind boggling in 2026. And so like, oh man, so this is great. So these guys are pushing this policy. They support this policy. It must be great because look at how wealthy these guys are. And so as a result, there's no resistance. We got the Klaus Schwab 2030 agenda on track for 2028, and no one's even talking about it. And that's effectively where we are right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible. Also, good point about Peter Thiel. He's come up in our conversations quite a bit here over at Logos. We know that he's also had his hand involved in the parallel society, quote unquote, network state space. And we understand that, I mean, a lot of the viewpoints, by the way, we can speak to this. We don't have to go down the full rabbit hole, but a lot of these viewpoints from Peter Thiel and some other folks who we could put into the technocrat bucket, they have this sort of neo-reactionary Curtis Yarvin type perspective where there needs to be some kind of technocratic philosopher king overseeing society. I know that Trump has been and his admin has been influenced by this perspective. So yeah, I'm going to let you speak to that, but I think Chair has his hand up. We'll let Chair add a comment. And then I want to just give everyone, maybe we have just a mental break for a second. The things that we're talking about are dire. One could argue that there's some black pills sort of injected into this conversation. There's some negative, but I want to be really clear. This is an analysis and a discussion that we have to have for the sake of education, especially if there's people who are new to the space that are in here right now. But bear with us because we are going to get to talking about with Aaron, because Aaron does focus on solutions. He's got several websites up. He's got partnerships. He works with us. He works with a number of people who are trying to figure out how we can get beyond this, aside from the education, the tooling. He mentioned exit and build. We're going to get into all that. So I want you guys to stay patient with us. In the meantime, Chair, you have some commentary for us as well, my friend, on this. I know you have a lot to say on this topic.
I'm going to try to keep it brief and focused here. Aaron, want to ask you specifically, since we are touching on Peter Thiel, how does it land with you? And have you ever pondered, and maybe what's your position on the fact that in 2013, a young Vitalik Buterin received a $100,000 Thiel Fellowship grant that enabled him to leave the University of Waterloo and pursue founding Ethereum? That's significant to me. How does it land with you?
Oh, I mean, I think Ethereum is a surveillance project. So I guess I don't have I don't have like a necessarily, I don't put Vitalik in a pro-freedom camp.
Yeah, neither do I. Yeah. I used to, but not anymore.
Yeah, no, I used to as well. And we could go down the Ethereum thing for the structure of Ethereum and all. We could go this in a whole variety of different things, but I don't view that as a feather in either Peter Thiel's cap or Vitalik's for that matter.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking for validation on that position, and I think you've given it to me.
Pretty much, I figured that Aaron, pretty much any technology that is so one of the issues that we're dealing with too is that the incentives for a lot of these, the sort of the mainstreamy cryptocurrency platforms, this means Bitcoin, Ethereum, it's all completely surveillance prone, right? Completely transparent, perfect for hijacking, perfect for surveilling its user base, and very difficult to use unless you have some sufficient levels of technical acumen being private on those platforms. And even then, it's still really hard to have enough OPSEC and enough privacy tooling on those platforms to be completely private. This is, of course, why Logos exists, right? So that it's a completely decentralized, privacy preserving technology stack. It's also why cryptocurrencies like Monero exist, right? Why Xano exists. We're going to get into all that as well. Oh man, there was something that was on the tip of my tongue too when you guys were speaking about. I think it was related to Peter. Anyway, it'll come back to me. Let's get into the exit and build stuff, Aaron. Maybe you can talk about some of your current projects and where you feel we should exert the most pressure and influence in terms of development, in terms of the work that we're doing to try to route around all of this crazy surveillance apparatus machinery that we're beset by.
Yeah, I mean, so part of the, I know this first part is doom and gloom, but part of the reason that I even talk about this, I would rather spend all of my time on the exit and build part. But the problem is we have to go a lot faster than people realize. Like we are in a race here, and the technocrats are moving quickly. You look at Genius and Clarity and then AI surveillance and Palantir and everything else. It's like we're actually competing against that. We have to get a sufficient number of people exiting and building. It's not going to work with just, a few thousand people here or there. You're not going to be able to protect yourself from the Death Star, in the forest, right? We actually need to put a significant dent into what they're doing. And the good news is we can. I mean, I think enough people exiting, I say ditch the dollar, not that it's the end all be all, but by doing that, you deprive them of their control system while at the same time building a parallel alternative. And what, you can go to daylightfreedom.org and see a whole variety of different things. We have, 8 different initiatives going on, but I think the most powerful one is ownnothing.org, which I'm still in the process of revamping. But the idea here is that people need to own their own lives. They need to understand, fundamentally that this is about taking control of your own destiny in a variety of dimensions. Owning your own mind, which is critical. Owning your own privacy, your own money, your own attention. Owning your body, your food, your kids' future. Owning what you bought. Owning your word, and owning AI. I mean, because there's certainly, just as there's a duality with how crypto can be rolled out, there are open source, empowering forms of AI. It doesn't all have to be, Oracle or Palantir. And, AI is here to stay, but people need to understand how to use it proactively as an extension of what they're doing, as opposed to a passive tool that they're using to allow themselves to be programmed. And so that is at the basis, those areas, linking to other, it's not that I'm building solutions for those. I mean, in some cases I've built solutions for those, but it's linking in other people that are building solutions around those areas to help people reclaim their sovereignty. And to me, that's the most critical thing. We just launched a Daylight Freedom phone. This is a de-Googled phone that comes with a bunch of privacy apps, VPNs, Xano wallet, Bitcoin.com wallet, apps to links to all of the websites that I've created as tools, because I've spent a lot of time. I spent a couple of years doing workshops trying to onboard people to privacy coins. And I will tell you, that is a slow process. Even if you get 100 people in a room, it's like, okay, well, now you have to download 2 wallets and everything else. And it's, by the time you're done with a 4-hour workshop, you come back the next year and maybe, 20% of the people even remember, that they had the wallet. It's a very, you're not going to scale things up that way. And so at this point, it's how can we come up with things by having a phone. This is like this helps with sovereignty, and this has like a private AI on it. It has a whole bunch of things that hit a bunch of those areas all at once. And so I think we need to really focus on how we can take these privacy tools and make them easier for people to adopt, because I think that is probably the biggest sticking point that we have. A lot of these centralized solutions and the technocrats are great at making things easy. I mean, you lose your privacy and your soul in the process, but at the same time, it's really easy. While it's hard to do, technically, it is possible to make privacy solutions easy to use. And so anything that we can do to help in that regard. And I'll just say, because I mean, I am in the US, and so this is in different places in the world, but we launched a site called OSARA, which is a medical tourism marketplace. So in the US, if you really look at how you're tethered to the system here, you're tethered through the money and you're tethered through healthcare. I mean, in the US, people, your health insurance is tied to your employer. So you have people that have jobs that they absolutely hate just so that they can have health insurance. Well, it turns out that health insurance doesn't even help you. It doesn't even, even in a catastrophic situation, because in the United States, every minute somebody files for medical bankruptcy, 75% of those are insured. So it's a scam. And the OSR site explains why it's a scam, how pricing works, the whole thing. And it's unfixable. It's the furthest thing from a market-based solution. So it turns out the medical tourism industry has flourished, and Thailand is actually the biggest destination globally for medical tourism. And it's $100 billion a year area. And we're not talking about just cosmetic procedures. We're talking about complex heart bypass surgery. We're talking about cancer treatment. We're talking about things you can't even get in the United States because of the FDA. And so, so something like this. So all I did was I created basically an online resource where you can see and rate all of the medical tourism destinations. We don't charge for it, but what we're trying to do is actually encourage people when they do connect with the medical tourism facility. We introduce both people to Freedom Dollar and Zano. Because one of the problems with medical tourism is if you're in the US and you need to get a $10,000, procedure somewhere, your credit card company might block that. Your bank is not, I mean, if you've ever done business from a bank and you've tried to deal with an institution in a foreign country, I mean, they're going to reject you first, and then you're going to have to go through some complex system of, checks and KYC or whatever. What do you need that money for and everything else? And so, it's a real problem. It's one of the hindrances for medical tourism in a broader sense. And then the medical tourism facilities don't want to take credit cards because then they have the risk of chargebacks. So if you had something like Freedom Dollar, which is a stable coin, but it's not a stable coin in the sense of like Tether or USDC or under the Genius Act. It's actually it's an algorithmic stable coin that's backed by Zano, and it itself is a privacy coin. So you can't freeze or track Freedom Dollar, which has the ticker symbol of FUSD. So the idea is, so you go to this medical tourism website, you find a place that you want to go, and then it introduces both parties to the idea of, hey, you don't have to deal with wires or banks or PayPal, which is another one that's difficult for medical. So it's just a way to help introduce people to alternative payments while at the same time helping to onboard people to the idea that you can exit the healthcare system in the US. And so these are some of the projects, but part of in doing something like that is I wanted other people to realize, because people are like, well, what am I going to do in this alternative economy? Well, everything that exists in the centralized economy needs to be re-envisioned in a parallel system. And so if there's something you're passionate about, you can just build it. It's wide open. If you're passionate about food freedom, build a network of farms around the world and introduce those farms and those locations to alternative payment systems. I mean, there's so much, it's literally unlimited what you can do. But I think that's where we need to head. And, people can do whatever they want. I know there's a lot of focus on local, and I mean, local is important, but I don't think that we need to confine ourselves to just being able to trade within our local geography. The idea of being able to engage in voluntary trade around the world, create a food marketplace that can serve the world. Don't just confine yourself or narrow yourself to your geography. And I think we'll get better traction there, because I know it's hard for anyone to get critical mass in one local area. It is possible, but why limit yourself? I mean, yes, do things positively in your own local area, but then also keep your marketplaces open as well. I think that is a good thing for people to consider, because you'll scale faster and you'll be able to become self-sufficient faster.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for both, right? There's some folks who might want to focus locally because of the human connection that's more difficult to have like in an international business setting. But 100%, Aaron, you're correct that we have to have solutions internationally that provide privacy, that provide ease of access, ease of transaction, and the ability for people to get what they need at light speed while also not being surveilled. And so that's why I give you props for working with folks to make this happen. I really love the medical tourism issues you brought up and the solutions for that as well. Now, one of the things that keeps coming back to my head is like I guess through the process of working like internationally and trying to develop this out, this is to me really representative of this exit mindset, right? Because people are also, I think, moving. Man, I want to get your take on this. Not sure if we've gone into detail on this in previous episodes, but people exiting to even if they're maybe they're doing medical tourism in a different location. Perhaps this is part of the digital nomad. We've seen a huge influx of digital nomads in a lot of different countries. This is probably part of that because there's a market there, obviously. Do you see, do you continue to see parallel societies and whole novel institutions being created that are antithetical to the technocratic industrial complex that is emerging around us? Do you think that is feasible? Because it's one thing to build a technology. It's another thing to create whole new communities and cultures that leverage these technologies. Maybe we can talk about that, and then we can also talk about the ease of being able to use these technologies. I think you make a really good point about thinking about UI and UX in the tech, but maybe let's first think about the parallel society piece and how relevant those are to helping us push back against the technocratic agenda.
I think it's critically important. Now, I would actually turn to you because you know more about this than I do. You're the one who's been all around investigating this stuff. You're my go-to on this. I do know one of the concerns, and by the way, there's the idea that crypto is hijacked and a lot of these systems are hijacked, and that can happen with the network state concept could be turned into a technocratic thing, and in some cases
Already is.
yeah, it already is, and in fact, I will tell you, a lot of times, so Sterling's my go-to guy because I'll have conversations with somebody, and inevitably it's like, oh, have you heard about this network state? This is, and it's kind of like painting this as being the issue, and I'm like, man, you've got to talk to Sterling because you need to understand there's a history of it before Balaji wrote the book. There's a whole other deep understanding here. So I think certainly network states, we need experimentation in governance. We need to have more voluntary systems. And so I don't like the way where the branding is going with network states because we do need these new voluntary systems and we need experimentation there. It's vitally important, and I feel like it's getting hijacked. And so I don't have more than I do about all of the different things, all the different projects that are going on. But I know from talking to you and the things that you're working on that it is very much possible to create network states that are voluntary, that give people the ability to exit. I think the ability to exit is one of the most important aspects of this that people don't look at. A lot of it is presented as, well, yeah, here's a network state, but they don't, you'll never be able to exit. It's kind of like Hotel California, and there's not a deep understanding of certainly all of the thought and effort that you've put into it and the tools that you're designing, because it's also often presented as these network states are everything's transparent and everything. It's like, well, yeah, you joined a network state. Well, now here's a CBDC and now everybody knows everything that's going on. There's not a deep appreciation for the tools that you are creating because, again, yeah, you can have a network state and you can preserve your privacy. You can have the ability to exit. This needs to be explained. I guess we need to get the different views out at scale about network states and how they can be an alternative. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And anything I can do is I'm talking to people along the way to give you a voice to explain that because you're better at it than I am. I will certainly do and continue to do.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Aaron. Really appreciate it. Love to, of course, I ask because I love to get your take on it as well. Because really, when you're growing, when you're developing parallel institutions and you're providing alternatives, you're really providing the like substrate based tooling for these parallel societies. And to speak to what you said, I do want to let everyone know there's still a bunch of people who do think that people like Balaji and his network, and even with association with people like Peter Thiel, that these guys are actually responsible for initiating the network state movement and its identity and its branding. That's all absolutely false. Of course, these original ideas were written about by crypto anarchists, right? Timothy May wrote a piece in 1992 called Libertaria in Cyberspace, where he talks about these ideas in the context of people coming together, leveraging strong encrypted safeguards, strong anonymity enhancing technology to protect themselves from apparatuses of control. And that was the original vision of this. It was again written about in a similar fashion by people like Jerry Everhard, who wrote a book called Virtual States. And then probably one of the most important and critical pieces of literature in this space is the book called The Sovereign Individual, where the authors prophesied that there not only would be digital current, the stuff that Aaron is talking about, like increasing attempts at control by the Leviathan state, but then there would also be individuals who were going to push back with technology and create sovereign, autonomous zones for people to congregate and to build. So this is the initial like exit and build kind of ethos. And then you guys know, and I think Aaron, you probably have a copy of the book. A lot of people here do. Jared and Peter recently wrote Farewell to Westphalia, which chronicles, like, what really puts together these ideas and kind of chronicles the lineage and the history. And it's the understanding, when looked at in totality, not only means that we have these parallel societies for people to opt out of the traditional system, but it also plays right into what you're saying, Aaron, where we can leverage privacy tooling. We can also have the sandbox places to work and to develop and to build while protecting our developers. And I think this gets into the next piece of the conversation before we can move into questions, where we talk about this notion of crypto political prisoners. I think one of the reasons that we're trying to build some of this infrastructure is to help protect these guys, because the state continues to go after, even when there's this feeling or this illusion that they're pro crypto. It's just that, it's an illusion, because they're still attacking developers, they're still attacking engineers, and they're coming after people who are trying to build the tooling to help protect people. So let's get your thoughts on this. Like, speak to this concept of political prisoners and crypto, and how we can help them, right?
Yeah. So I exited politics and moved into crypto and actually tokenization. And then what happened is I found that the people that I knew personally, at first, and then now others, that were the most effective at either promoting peer-to-peer exchange or developing open source privacy protocols were being targeted by the federal government. And this list has expanded and expanded and expanded. And so I've actually come to the realization that there is a use for politics in a very specific way. And I'll explain actually two ways that I'm doing it right now. But I'm running for U.S. Senate from New Hampshire, and I have to give you a little background on this. Back in my days when I was actively involved in politics, I did this in 2016. And I did this specifically to stop the encroachment of the federal government in New Hampshire, because I live in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project. I didn't care about Washington, D.C., but what I found is that our elected U.S. Senator, this woman named Kelly Ayotte, was interfering with our state level politics for the purpose of increasing her chances of getting reelected. So I'm like, okay, this is not a great thing, because if essentially New Hampshire is being controlled by Washington, D.C. anyway, well, what is it that we're doing here? What this whole idea of, well, politics is bottom up is not actually how it works. So I said, listen, if you guys are going to basically expand Obamacare through Medicaid expansion just to help this Kelly Ayotte get reelected, I'm going to run as an independent. And it wasn't even going to be me. I was going to try to recruit somebody else. But I said, not only am I going to do that, I'm going to recruit two other people to run for the other two congressional seats as independents, because we're not going to win in primaries. But in a close 50-50 thing, if you run a third party, you can spend almost no money and determine the outcome of the election. So I gave people notice of this, and they didn't believe I would do it. They didn't believe it would work, and I did it. And it was the most expensive Senate race in the history of the United States per capita. $131 million, $99 per vote. I got almost 18,000 votes. Kelly Ayotte lost by 1,100 votes. It's now well documented that my race was the cause of it. And not only was that the most expensive U.S. Senate race, but the other two were the margin of difference as well. So for the first time since 1854, New Hampshire has not had a Republican, did not have a Republican in the U.S. Congress, and they haven't had one since. So now, did that work? Well, I mean, I showed that it can be done, but people didn't take advantage of it. I got frustrated, got out of politics. Well, now fast forward, here we are. We have, at least 7 crypto political prisoners. Trump said the war on crypto is over, and yet we have Ian Freeman, we have Roger Ver still has a gag order, Keone and Will from Samurai, we have Roman Storm, we have Roman Sterlingoff, we have Ray Youssef. More people being added all the time. Well, I looked at this and I said, well, Trump likes to do deals, and this is kind of his art of the deal thing. Here's the situation: the Republicans are going to lose control of the House. The Senate, based on the prediction markets, is 50-50. And now what's going on in New Hampshire? New Hampshire is a 1-point race. The Democrat is only 1 point ahead. So I said, well, you know what? Maybe I'll run again as an independent, because I know I can be a spoiler. And so here's the deal. Basically, I've listed out 4 demands, but if we don't free the crypto prisoners, stop the Clarity Act, and a couple of other things, then I will collect all the signatures and put my name on the ballot, and it may cost the Republican Party control of the United States Senate. So this is one thing that I'm saying. I'm saying you can strategically use a third party. No one's going to fix Washington, D.C., but these people are interested. The Republicans want power. The Democrats want power. Good. Come in and use a third party as leverage to hold them accountable. And again, what I'm asking for is not like outrageous demands. The claim was the war on crypto was over. The war on crypto is not over when you're passing the Patriot Act on steroids and throwing people in prison. It's just not. So that's one part of it. Now, they want to keep me off the ballot. I don't want to get into too much detail. So I'm actually having to sue the state of New Hampshire in federal court. And I have a hearing. I have a very, very good chance of winning on constitutional grounds. But this is the other part of this. I'm representing myself, and I've used AI to draft all of these documents. And this is not just go in and say, ChatGPT, write this. I'll explain after this is done how this worked. But I basically got an accelerated timetable. I've never seen the courts move this quickly. They actually went faster than I expected them to work. And I fully expect to win. And what this means is, if that does work, we can take a system like the way I'm using AI, kind of similar to the way Mike Adams is using it, and we can empower people around the country and eventually around the world, if you have a place where you can represent yourself pro se, to file lawsuits. So now you're not encumbered by legal fees. You can literally sue people. It would cost me $30,000 to do this lawsuit, and I've done it myself using AI. So if people don't like technocratic data centers, great, file a lawsuit pro se. And now gum up the works. Use AI and use these tools to fight them through the bureaucratic process instead of being a victim to it. So those are 2 things that I will say. I would like to not be doing these things, but unfortunately, if they're going to take the best people that we have that are working on these things and throw them in prison, we need to do everything that we can to defend them and to get them out, and to then show it, because it does have a chilling effect. There are a lot of people that won't do development, that don't work, and certainly no one's going to do privacy work in the United States of America. So if we can win here, we can not only get these people free, which is the first and most important thing, but we can show that we have now another arrow in our quiver to fight technocracy.
Bro, that was extremely well said. You just blew my mind. I had no idea what you were dealing with and how you were engaging with it by leveraging AI. That's actually really brilliant. Gumming up the works to a system that is already slow and cumbersome and tired and has an inability to even process its own cases. That is fucking legit, dude. So I think all of us here can definitely give you a fist up to help push this forward. I personally, this is my personal thought. I love that direction, and I don't think anyone is going to begrudge you of the usage of politics for this particular use case here. I mean, I clearly, I think a lot of people a lot of us are really, really diehard, dyed-in-the-wool, sort of with the exit mindset. Not only leaving like technologically, culturally, and spiritually, but also leaving physically where necessary. But the way that you're conducting your exit strategies and the way that you're wanting to push back into the system is deeply inspirational, Aaron. And we want to thank you for your work in this space. It's just amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to say one other thing about that, because this was my
Sure.
approach. I was absolutely done with politics. But again, but then I found that, people like Ian Freeman, but everybody that is working on the exit and build strategy, you have to understand that the U.S. has a really long arm. So, I mean, they got Roger Ver in Spain a decade after, he left on, in my opinion, just complete BS, because they wanted to shut him down. And then I was at Moneratopia in Mexico City And Ray Youssef was there. He was supposed to speak right before me, and he was literally detained by 20 agents, I believe, at Monerotopia and deported to the United States from Mexico. So I think it's really important for people. And Sterling, you and I were there 2 years ago, right? And so that, like, I had a weird vibe about Monerotopia. I'm like, how many people are feds in the audience here? And now, because a lot of people are moving to Mexico, and they're like, yeah, Mexico's great and everything else. And it's like, okay, well, Ray just got deported. And I fully support Ray. Everybody should, look into his case as well, because this is a case that happened under Trump. It's not just a prosecution that happened under Biden that hasn't been dealt with. This was all done under Trump. So the U.S. government, it's hard to hide from the U.S. government, that you end up really confined. It's not just you can't travel to the U.S. It's like, I know some people that can't go to the EU. I know other people that can't go to the United States. Like it's a real problem, and we need some tools to be able to have some leverage here and buy some time, because the one thing that we need for the exit and build strategies, we need time. And right now, with the lack of friction against the technocrats, we're losing time.
Yeah, that's perfectly stated. And by the way, working in the space for the last 10 years, I've had to deal with losing, I think personally lost upwards of 12 to 13 bank accounts, working in the crypto space. A good friend of mine who's actually been on our space before, him, Ernesto, has dealt with his companies getting banks closed and shut down. And as a result of this, he left, right? He left the US and went, and he's permanently abroad now as a result of these attacks. And by the way, this is another dimension of this that we haven't really fully got into, but it's this notion of human capital flight, right? Where, like, the US has lost a lot of its human capital, a lot of its brain power, because they're scaring people off, right? And a lot of the crypto entrepreneurs are like, I'm not even going to deal with this. But like you said, even if you try to leave, there is still, the US does have a long reach, right? They have this notion of extraterritorial reach, I think is what it's called in the legalese, where they'll just actually absolutely come after you. And I think the key here, like, to help minimize that, is, of course, to keep building the tools that we're building, to make sure that exit exists on a multitude of domains, right? So this is the physical exit, of course, right? But this is also the technological exit, having the privacy alternatives. This is also exit in terms of the culture, creating cultures that shun and are unforgiving toward this traditional system. They recognize that it's failing. The good news is that the system is collapsing of its own weight as well. I think something right now to the tune of 70% of people are dissatisfied with their democracies and democratic republics. Something like 80% of people live under authoritarian regimes. The stats seem to suggest that the system is collapsing of its own weight, and what we're helping is just usher in the new society. And that's why we need people like you, Aaron, to keep pushing this forward, why we need organizations like Logos, and the number of people working in the context of regenerative finance, crypto anarchist tooling, zero knowledge cryptography. All of this is 100% necessary to move the dial forward and away from this panopticon system that's trying to control us. So again, man, thanks so much. I hope, and we have to continue fighting for these folks who have gotten imprisoned, who've gotten caged as simply a result. And I'm glad you brought up Ray Youssef's case. It's not a case that we've actually mentioned in the space, but I know Ray personally as well, and I know that he's a good guy. I know that he's always built in a principally centric way, and I thought, some of his earliest work was absolutely amazing. So we should do what we can to, defend his honor and defend his freedom, legally speaking, spiritually speaking, philosophically speaking. At least that's my personal perspective on the matter. So, and I think right now, by the way, guys, this is a good opportunity to reset the room. We're here with our good friend Aaron Day, discussing issues of paramount importance with regard to, we discussed already the Clarity Act and its trajectory, and how really awful it is for individual liberty, for financial freedom and privacy. We've talked about the exit and build strategy, some of the tooling involved, some of the work that Aaron is doing, especially in the medical tourism. So, man, Aaron, you just do so much. You got so many domains opened up, and you're such a great educator. Good stuff. And now I think we're at a point where we can, if you guys are interested in asking Aaron some questions, or you want to engage in the conversation, which has been a very lively conversation, please, by all means, raise your hand, come up to the stage and chat with us. In the meantime, Aaron, if there's anything else that I said there that you want to comment on, I know that the crypto political prisoner thing is something very serious a very serious issue that we have to like rectify as soon as possible. And by the way, I mentioned something maybe we can riff on. I speak quite often with Amir. Amir Taki with DarkFi is a good friend of mine. His strategy for this situation has been he's focused on the tooling side of it. Him and his team said that we need to create what he calls a dark forest infrastructure, which is basically technological tooling that has such strong privacy and anonymity safeguards that it makes it really difficult for governments and for the alphabet soup agencies to actually locate these folks, because a lot of the times these folks got quote unquote caught, or at least it was easier for the state apparatus and their allies to come after them because of all the transparency and different weaknesses in various domains from their work. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, Amir's great, and he's absolutely right. We do need those tools. And again, I think we just need a multi-pronged approach. The only thing that I would say is that we probably need more urgency than we have. I think that I've been tracking this for a long time, and in fact, I've even created I'll bring up another project of mine called Technocracy Atlas. Technocracy Atlas allows you to see animated maps by state in the US and by country. So we have 197 countries in all 50 states, and it shows the growth of technocracy by each of those regions since 1973, and then projected into 2030. But you can actually get a free PDF report. And what you'll see, and I put it together like this because it's important, because when you're in it, it may feel like, oh, well, we have time. Once you see what's going on and the rate of change on 7 different dimensions, and I've got a whole white paper that analyzes or explains what went into the methodology, but everything from digital IDs to programmable digital currencies to AI surveillance, like we're in the late stages of this. We're not in the, hey, this is something that might happen in 5 years. We're in the infrastructure's already built. Half of it's already been built up. People are already under it. They don't even realize it. And so, I just want to express the exit and build is awesome, and it is the only way out. We're not going to vote our way out. And even the political stuff is just to buy time. But buy time to do what? Well, buy time to exit and build. And so anything that we can do, and it's a big mindset shift, because people have been propagandized everywhere into believing that there's only a finite range of what is possible, and breaking through that is obviously a big challenge to get people to even understand what we're talking about. But it is possible. We just keep at it. And I honestly, I've got to say, I probably spent half of my time this year on these political prisoners. We did a big event called Enemies of the State at the Libertarian Convention in Grand Rapids. Great team there. Dan O'Neill, Chris Fox, like it was a full production. Lynn Ulbrich was there. We had people representing all of these prisoners, their lawyers. We even got video clips. I've talked to Roman Sterlingoff in prison. We got a video clip from Roman Storm. I mean, I've gotten to know these people, and this is the one thing that I will say that we also need to educate people on is that the practices of the Department of Justice, if people understood what their playbook was, people would be outraged. There would be rioting. You lose the majority of these cases never go to court, and the prosecution wins like 99% of the time, and it's not because these people are guilty. It's because the deck is absolutely stacked. The average lawsuit in the Southern District of New York costs $13 million to defend. So the cost itself is a barrier to even be able to defend yourself. But the tactics in these cases are similar. It's like the same thing. I've written a bunch of songs. I have a bunch of AI music videos for each of the prisoners, and then some with all of them in there and everything. But you know what? They always start with like 6 in the morning. And it's like 6 in the morning, and there's like a Bearcat and drones and like anywhere between 20 and 40 federal agents, because this is part of what we've got to shock these guys. We've got to send a strong message, right? And then it's like you go on and on, and you look at stuff like this, like in the Roman Sterlingoff case, they're trying to use Chainalysis against him, but they're not allowed to question Chainalysis. So it's a complete black box. They can't actually do discovery on how Chainalysis works. So no one knows how it's actually working, but they convicted him on it. And because that was set as a precedent, that can be used against anyone. So now the government has this black box tool that they can use against us to say, hey, yeah, these were your transactions, when maybe they're not even your transactions. Roman Sterlingoff isn't even behind Bitcoin Fog. They provided no evidence of it, but they have this Chainalysis thing. And the way they do discovery. So I could go on a long rant, but the thing is, when it's one crypto political prisoner, then it's like, oh, well, this guy, he said some fringe things and people might be able to write that off. But after you go through 7 of these cases and then you go through the legal documents and you look through the process, it's like, man, we have absolutely no semblance of justice. If you think the political system is bad, wait until you learn about the judicial system in this country.
Yeah, it's a complete clusterfuck. It's like kangaroo court after kangaroo court. There's like no way you can't really muster a defense when you're already categorized as the enemy. I mean, it's pretty much a given. And what their goal is, of course, is to make examples out of the crypto folks, because I think we talked about this earlier, where it acts as a deterrent, right? That creates a chilling effect where developers now will be, oh man, I better not work on that. And by the way, I actually know people. I've worked, working in this space over 10 years now. I've talked to engineers who are like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And they actually, handed in their resignation because they don't want to build technology that could potentially put them in the crosshairs, even if what they're working on is, the most like asinine bit of part of the technology that really probably can't get them in trouble. It's even preventing people from doing like basic kinds of maintenance engineering from continuing down this path and doing this work. And that's absolutely terrifying. And this also speaks to what I was talking about earlier with this notion of brain drain and human capital flight. I think the U.S. definitely is going to continue to end up losing a lot of its engineering talent, even its entrepreneurial talent, to people who are just going to leave, and they're going to go to places that they at least assume are more hospitable to their personal work, right? This is also partly why Crypto Valley was created, right? Why Switzerland became such a hot spot for crypto folks to found their company. I think Eric Voorhees, he was originally, at his company when Shapeshift was going strong in the US, they relocated over to the EU. So, and I know that a lot of folks still have, not that the EU now at least is any better, right? I mean, that's actually, they're actually starting to lock down crypto folks quite heavily. And I know a bunch of the cases have actually been conducted in Europe. So this is just becoming a global phenomenon of control that we're having to work really hard to push back on. So the exit mindset in this regard has to expand. It can't just be like physical exit is one thing, but as Aaron so eloquently pointed out, which is true, these guys can come after you in many different contexts. So it has to be exit in a lot of different contexts: philosophical exit, spiritual exit, cultural exit, and also this political pushback and political activism that you're engaging in is an interesting tactic as well, Aaron, especially from the idea of gumming up the works. We have Christopher on the stage, who's a good friend of ours. Welcome to the stage, Christopher.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for having me here. How's it going, Aaron? I totally agree, obviously, with everything that you've been saying. I just wanted to bring up two kind of points where just kind of average, everyday people who aren't, don't have too much social clout or following or anything. There is a bounty now to write something along the lines of how we got Ross out for the samurai guys. It's being offered by, oh man, Peter
Paul,
Strzok. Excuse
Peter.
me.
Yeah, yep.
Yes. I just want to kind of throw that out there. Also, with the Roman Storm, the retrial is happening rather soon. So if anybody's in the area, I'm going to be going there and showing face and breaking chops at the trial. Obviously, like, I'm not going to be like throwing rocks at the building, but just to show a support for Roman. Like, it's really hard to think that we stand a chance, but just to kind of turn our backs and be like, oh, fuck it, like, that's it. We lost another one. Like, we can't, as just like, our physical bodies have to show rather than just like digital a lot of the times, like what you guys did with Enemy of the State, like a show of numbers. Like, nah, we don't agree with this type of bullshit. And just continuing to build in that way. It's important that Roman keeps fighting and not take a plea, because every time somebody takes a plea, it's just another precedent these motherfuckers get to send. It's another liberties we lose. And it's really frustrating from, as we all know, just from, like a citizen of America, whatever the idea of America and how that's completely changed in our lifetimes. I really admire everything you guys are doing individually. It's good to hear both of you guys on the stage together. And with that, I'm going to step back.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was, Roman Storm has the worst set of circumstances right now amongst all the prisoners. He's looking at, I believe, a total of 45 years. And on top of that, he doesn't have the financial resources to, I mean, as I said, 13.6 million is the average amount to defend a case in the Southern District of New York. And now he's being retried. So he has two lawsuits. He has to go through this process twice. So go to freeromanstorm.com. And if you have some additional funds available, please donate to his campaign. I know when we were doing the Enemies of the State, I reached out to him like, hey, can you have a lawyer come and talk on your behalf? He's like, listen, we only have the money to pay our lawyer, like the bare bones. Like he's like, we're barely able to do that. Eventually he ended up recording his own short video, but this is how dire his circumstances are. And so if you can support financially, if you can show up to the trial, please do, because it's true that in-person presence absolutely helps.
Hey, Sterling. Hey, Aaron. How you doing? This is Dan from the Enemies of the State.
Yo, Dan. Welcome, man.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at this whole entire thing as an Agenda 2030 issue where the central bankers are using this technocracy as a weapon of control against everybody. And the Agenda 2030 is just a worldwide eugenics program. Sponsored by Pfizer, Raytheon, and Palantir. And now the reason why the enemies of the state are targeted is because these are the innovators. These are guys that are peaceful people that have created technologies to circumvent this and to help mankind with peer-to-peer cash, exposing a lot of crimes that are going on worldwide, and as the whistleblowers with Snowden, Assange, Jack Teixeira, Jonathan Schulter. But the crypto guys, Roger, Ross, Ian, Roman Storm, Roland Sturmanoff, William Hill, Ray Youssef. I mean, these guys are real enemies of the state. I mean, these guys weren't here to make money or whatever. They're there to change the world, to make it a better place, to make humankind more free. And those are the guys that did it better than anybody. And that's why they're being hunted down by some of the most evil governments and the FBI and the DOJ. But these guys are also heroes, and they've committed no crimes. There's no victims in any which way. And the more noise we can make for these guys, the more events, doing what Aaron's doing in New Hampshire, they don't like that. Eventually, they're going to cave. So I think what Ernest Hancock would say, we need to change public opinion. That's very important. And just want to thank you, Sterling, and thanks, Aaron, for everything you guys do. You guys are both legends, and thanks for letting me speak.
Dan, you're more than you're welcome anytime to our spaces, my friend. We actually have to probably get you on at some point as well to discuss your perspective, my friend. Thank you. Aaron, before you respond, if you have a response, you can, and then we have M on the stage from the Logos community.
Yeah, I was going to say Dan is also an absolute rock star, and so this Enemies of the State thing was his idea, and so the first one was 2024 at the Libertarian Convention, literally the night before Trump addressed the Libertarian Convention and said he was going to commute Ross's sentence. And so Enemies of the State is expanding. I don't know how much I can say about it. I won't ruin any surprises, but I'm going to say that Dan and his team are scaling this up. And so watch out for it. If you can, follow them on X, because there are going to be more events, more content, and a variety of different formats coming. So can't say enough great things about Dan.
Yeah, same. Worked with Dan in the past too. I know we've done some talks and stuff together. By the way, can you guys give us a link to the Enemies of the State? Put it in the post, Dan, if you can, or for the space, and I can put it in the Megatron. People can look at it if you guys continue to have the event. And keep into contact with us over here at Logos, because we might be interested in taking a deeper look at that at least. Okay, M, welcome to the stage, my friend.
Hey Sterling, hey Chair, Aaron, how are you guys doing? Just wanted to ask you all something since I got a little bit late and I see the title of this space, the War on Financial Privacy. I wanted to make a question related to the recent news about the approval of the chat control law at this moment. Since you know that blockchain contains messages, I don't know if they would even consider it as a message, and they therefore would be looking to control blockchains or prosecute people working on blockchains related to privacy or products related to privacy, even more than before. So I wanted to ask you, like, if that's even a real type of approach that they will give to people working on the blockchain field, because I feel like it could be something almost psychopathic, you know? So I wanted to know your position about it.
So position on what? Could you say the first part again?
Oh, all right. Today, the motion of chat control was approved, right? So chat is basically information. And blockchains are like kind of related to messaging because it's a message, right? One blockchain produce messages. So I was wondering if it will be possible to make a type of approach into like blockchains, and if they will look to control blockchains even more than what they are doing it right now with this type of idea, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm just like look this up now. The EU chat control. Yeah, this is horrible. I actually haven't been on top of this, but this is it is psychopathic. You know, it is it allows online communication platforms to voluntarily detect, report, and remove child sexual abuse material. But of course, I mean that's just a pretext for being able to scan and screen everything. And yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar. Sterling, are you up to speed on this? I mean, I'm reading about it now, but I'm less knowledgeable about this than you know, say the Clarity Act.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have all the current knowledge like M does here, but I do. I have like loosely kept track of it. I know the EU has been trying to, you know, we've talked about the EU in this context of becoming more surveillance prone and oriented, and also trying to. But this, I mean, this is just the standard case, right? Because most European states, in my opinion, are just vassal states to the U.S., so they're just going to go along with whatever kind of surveillance apparatus or control apparatus is in place. And chat control this is something we can get into with the chat control. They've been saying that private companies should have the ability, and private tech firms should have the ability to scan messages for potential child sexual abuse material, right? CSAM. But yes, like you're exactly right, Aaron. This is just another pretext. It's like, oh, the children, you know, oh, the bad people. We have to do something about it. But the result, of course, is always that innocent and good people lose their privacy. They lose their ability to be free online. They lose their ability to maintain their digital properties, and so we have to continue. I mean, one of the things that Logos is proud to represent is activist schools of thought. We have to continue being activists as well, and pushing back and educating about this type of encroachment on our personal liberties, because it's absolutely horrendous. And this goes back, of course, to the exit and build ethos. But I think that there has been significant pushback, at least in the EU. I know there's several activist groups who have been trying to ensure that this chat control initiative continues. At least there's people continue to fight against it. But I hadn't heard the recent news if some aspect or element of it got approved, as Em was reporting here.
Yep, that doesn't look good. I'm seeing the headline. I mean, obviously the headlines don't look good, so I'm going to dig into this further. But yeah, all the more reason we need. Amir's right. I mean, we need not only obviously privacy coins, but we need the ability to communicate and work privately. And it's stuff like chat control just exemplifies why that's so critically important right now.
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, the reason, I mean, this is why I think a lot of organizations have, especially in our space that are working in a more crypto anarchist context, even if these folks are not hardcore crypto anarchists who are working in privacy, there are a lot of people I think are realizing that things have gotten so dire with surveillance, and governments and corporations are trying to exercise such extreme power over the population, that people that there are, this is the good news, that there are people who are becoming more dedicated to develop tooling that doesn't give any kind of credence whatsoever, right? This is also, I think, why the privacy coins, largely Xano and Monero, have become so much more popular recently, and why. So there is an element of like the privacy narrative becoming larger and louder as a result of people caring about it. But this is also why the system and people are trying to hijack that narrative for their own ends and try to create like pseudo privacy type applications and to deploy those applications. But at the same time, we do have genuine and authentic interest in protecting and preserving privacy on a fundamental level. And it's organizations like ours who have to keep pushing this forward, and we have to keep involving and educating developers and engineers to build this tooling and to help keep us as private, as online as possible. With no, this is all principally centric design. There can be no leeway given to non-privacy type of application. I think privacy by default has to be the continuing rallying cry of everything that we're working on, bar none.
Agreed.
Cool. Do we have any other questions or any other thoughts from you guys? We can probably field one more if you guys have it. If not, we are moving toward the end of the space, and we would definitely want to be respectful of Aaron's time here. This has been probably we've had a lot of really killer spaces and a lot of really killer guests these last few weeks, but this is one of my particular favorite subjects that Aaron brings to the table here, especially as we discussed what we can do to help crypto political prisoners. Cool. Well, I guess that then we're at everyone's probably mentally taxed now, because this is definitely a conversation that can take a mental toll. So Aaron, I want to give you any of your last words. Where can people find you? I need you guys in the chat. If you don't follow Aaron, you 100% need to follow Aaron and his work. Follow Logos, follow our work here. We're going to continue focusing on this privacy push. We care about personal freedom, financial sovereignty, financial responsibility, and all the things. Aaron, the stage is yours to kind of finish this up here, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always great to be on. Always a stimulating conversation, and obviously, you guys are right at the leading edge of where we need to be in terms of exit and build. You can find me on X at Aaron R. Day, which is primarily where I post. But you can link to the entire ecosystem and everything I'm working on at daylightfreedom.org. I also have a podcast called The Aaron Day Show. It's actually every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, so it'll be tonight. And actually, my guest tonight is James Corbett. And so this is actually a good interview. I actually pre-recorded it yesterday, but James is actually talking about a project called Libertas.Earth, which I encourage everyone to check out. It basically has a 7 to 8 minute video called The Philosophy of Liberty. And this video actually completely changed James Corbett's kind of view of the world, and really set him in a different direction in 2007. So I want to plug the episode, but also go to Libertas.Earth, because we have to win at the level of the mind, and the idea that we own ourselves and everything that entails. And so I'd end on that as a good thing for people to look at and share.
Cool. So Libertas.Earth for you guys is what Aaron mentioned. Jot that down, type it into your browser, check it out when you get a chance. Cool. All right. First of all, I want to thank Chair for helping co-host this space and bring us into the space. Thank you so much, my friend. I want to thank all the speakers who came up and added to the conversation with Aaron. So Dan, thank you for coming up. Christopher, thank you. Marco, for your questions and your commentary, some stuff that we need to dig further into right now. Good shit. Thank you so much to the OGs who came to this space and who have been here, especially since the very beginning of this chat. So Brandon, appreciate you. Raven, you've been in here most of the time. Tiger, thanks so much. Aaron and Rafal, thank you so much. We had Kelly in here, Polis, Cecilia, James down there has been here. So thank you guys so much. This is really a telling that you care deeply about this subject matter, and you're trying to do what you can to protect your own privacy and your own freedom and to help spread the gospel, right? To evangelize the good word of freedom and privacy and human dignity and decency, because at the end of the day, that's what matter. And we have to work as a community. We have to work together to push toward this exit and build ethos and to help free ourselves in the long term. Thanks so much again for joining us and giving us some of your time, Aaron. Let's continue working together, my friend. We'll be in contact. I know that we got a few things in the works. So you can let us know over here at Logos if you need anything at all, my man. Cheers,
Awesome.
man. Really
Appreciate it.
appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Bye.